People talk about cutting family ties like it's an act of anger. Like one day you simply snapped, packed your memories into a box, and walked away without looking back. But for many people, it was grief long before it was distance. The silence came after years of trying, after years of shrinking yourself to survive rooms that never felt safe. And the hardest part is this. You can miss people who hurt you. You can mourn a family that still exists. You can feel relief and heartbreak in the same breath. Because sometimes, the deepest grief is not losing your family. It's realizing you never truly had the kind of family you needed in the first place.
There are wounds that leave bruises. And then there are wounds that leave roles. The peacemaker, the invisible child, the emotional caretaker, the one who stayed quiet to keep everyone else comfortable. Families rarely say these roles out loud. They form slowly, like water carving lines into stone. One moment at a time, one silence at a time. Maybe you learned very early that your feelings were too sensitive. Maybe every boundary became disrespect. Maybe love always felt conditional, warm when you performed correctly, cold when you became inconvenient. So you adapted. You learned how to read moods before words were spoken. You learned how to apologize, even when you were hurting. You learned that survival sometimes meant abandoning yourself before someone else could do. Most people imagine estrangement as dramatic. A slammed door, a final argument, a clean break. But often, it happens quietly, like a slow emotional winter. You stop sharing personal things because vulnerability becomes ammunition. You rehearse conversations in your head before family gatherings. You leave visits feeling strangely exhausted, even when nothing bad technically happened. That confusion is part of the pain. Because emotional harm is difficult to explain when there are no visible scars. How do you describe the feeling of constantly being unseen? How do you explain what it does to a person when every interaction leaves them smaller than before? Sometimes the grief isn't about cruelty. Sometimes it's about chronic emotional absence. A family can provide food, shelter, holidays, and still leave someone emotionally starving. And eventually, the body begins to protest. The anxiety becomes physical. The exhaustion becomes permanent. The people-pleasing spreads into friendships, relationships, work. You begin living like someone who must earn the right to exist peacefully. The strange thing about healing after family estrangement is that relief often arrives before happiness. First comes silence. And at first, the silence feels unnatural. No criticism, no walking on eggshells, no emotional whiplash, no sudden guilt pulling at your chest in the middle of the night. Just space. But when someone has spent years surviving emotional chaos, peace can feel unfamiliar, even suspicious. You may keep waiting for punishment, waiting for the next conflict, waiting for someone to tell you that you were cruel for finally choosing yourself. Because people who grew up carrying emotional burdens often struggle to trust calmness. Chaos became home before safety ever did. And yet, slowly, something begins to happen. Your body unclenches in places you didn't realize were tense. You stop rehearsing every sentence before speaking. You begin noticing how much energy survival had been consuming. It is like walking out of a storm and realizing you had forgotten what stillness sounded like. But grief remains beside that relief. Not because you made the wrong choice, but because endings hurt, even necessary ones. You grieve birthdays that feel incomplete, memories that became complicated, versions of yourself that spent years begging to be loved correctly.